Can Israel depend on the U.S.'s unconditional support? Is unconditional support still in America's interest?
So I'm one who believes that the U.S. commitment to the state of Israel and its security, its right to exist, is so grounded in the history of the Holocaust and how the Israeli state came into being that the answer to that question has to be yes. But I think when people talk about a steadfast guarantee, an ironclad guarantee to the security of the state of Israel, I actually believe that on both sides of the aisle, most American leaders really mean what they say. That said, I think even those, and I would put myself in this category, who feel that commitment are deeply worried about the state of what's happening there. We have a situation where there's a huge rise of violence, stabbings, bombings, incitement, and so forth. We have a situation where you have a divided Palestinian Authority with the Palestinian Authority in one, led by Abbas in one camp, and then Hamas, which is a designated terrorist group, being the Palestinian leadership in the Gaza area. So a divided Palestinian leadership, one part of which is absolutely committed to the fact that Israel should not be allowed to exist. On the Israeli side, you have, I think, a political leadership that doesn't feel that it has the political space to even negotiate seriously in the peace process. At the same time, though, you have demographics. And one of the things about demographics is they keep marching along no matter what our policies are. And the demographics in Israel, inside Israel, I'm not talking about the Palestinian territories, but inside Israel, the demographics are such that the Arab Israeli populations are growing at a faster rate. So there will be a point in time, I don't know if it's 20 years from now or 25 years from now, but some time in most of our lifetimes, when Israel will come to a crossroad and have to decide, are we going to be a Jewish state or are we going to be a democratic state? Because you will not able to be both. In my mind, that's the deadline for peace negotiations. You have to figure out a two-state solution, 2 states for 2 peoples living in security, in dignity, et cetera, accepting each other's existence. But you can't just leave this and say it's too hard, or I don't feel that there's enough leadership on the other side. We have to pursue these negotiations if you're going to have a viable state of Israel and if you're going to have a durable peace in that area. And I do think both of those things are in U.S. interests.
So I take a personal interest in the question. I was in a past life the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post. I'm, I think, pretty well known as being a vocally pro-Israel. So that's where I'm coming from. Can Israel depend on the U.S.'s unconditional support? Probably. I mean, I guess it depends on how you define the word unconditional. I mean, I love my wife unconditionally, but if she runs off with Zubin Mehta, all bets are off. She's a music critic, so she would get that joke. I don't think Israel should not think of itself as depending on unconditional support. And what I mean by that is that it's good to have rock-solid friendships. Don't risk your life on them. And one of the things that is part of the U.S.-Israeli alliance is the notion that Israel should be able to defend itself by itself. That is to say, who knows who becomes president? We've suddenly discovered in the last 6 months that all kinds of characters are liable to become president. And Israel spent its first 19 years without unconditional American support. You don't want a relationship in which you stop thinking about your other options. That's not to say you want those other options, but it can't become a blinder. Now, is unconditional support still in America's interest? I would say yes, and I would ask you to think about it this way. Years ago, Patrick Buchanan, really a despicable character, but that's another story, said something like, why is America, this was during the first Gulf War, he said, why is America going to war in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait to defend Israel, or some words to that effect. And I remember that sentence stayed with me because it was so false and the finger was pointed in such a telling way. But I was thinking, the United States has gone to war to defend Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Bosnia. I'm just thinking about recent cases where we've deployed troops. And troops have died for all of those countries. American troops have died. As far as I'm aware, no American soldier has ever died for Israel. Not one. That's because Israel, uniquely among our allies, defends itself. We have tens of thousands of troops in Germany. We have about that number in Japan, also in Korea, Britain, Italy, rich countries. But we still are there, and we should be there, and we're defending them. What's funny about the Israeli relationship is it's the one country that we kind of are pretty sure will be able to fight its corner. And that's pretty good to have as an ally. And I know that Israel comes in for this, what I think is insane criticism and totally disproportionate criticism. But think about it. Imagine if your daughter were thrown out of a plane 40,000 feet above the Middle East, and she had a parachute, and she could steer the parachute into Lebanon, or Jordan, or Syria, or Gaza, or the Sinai, or to Tel Aviv. Where would you want her landing? I think it's a fair question to ask. The only country in which women have rights, equal rights, is Israel. The only country in which you'd want to be a gay person is Israel. The only country in which the government actually puts its corrupt politicians into jail, currently a president and a prime minister, is Israel. Well, Egypt has its former president in jail, but that's another story. That is a country that deserves a great deal of respect, and certainly one that deserves American support.
Going backwards
again. It's, you see, this is why she gets big jobs.
Yeah.
Will stronger U.S. relations bolster Iran's liberalization or further empower the religious government? How do you think Americans should think about Iran's future?
Oh, that's a really good one.